Hello, and welcome to the Empowerography Podcast. This is a platform created for women's voices to be heard and a place to share their stories, journeys, and successes with the world for the purpose of helping other women who might be on similar journeys. We are empowering women one episode at a time. I'm your host, Brad Walsh, so kick back, grab one of your favorite beverages, and enjoy the stories. Have you always dreamed about becoming a best-selling author? Well, I can make that dream come true for you if you're interested in writing a chapter for my next compilation book, Transforming Pain into Purpose, Triumphant Tales of Empowerment. If you're interested in learning more about writing and contributing to this compilation book, I'll put my contact info in the show notes. Please feel free to send me a DM on Facebook, or you can reach out to me through Instagram to learn more about this incredible opportunity to become an international best-selling author. Hello there, Brad Walsh here, your host of the Empowerography Podcast. Today, my guest is Lorna Gale. She is a sexuality and spirituality guide and mentor, a bondassage trainer and practitioner, and a story unweaver. I love that term, Lorna. Such a powerful and incredible and intriguing term. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for taking and making the time to share a bit about your story and your journey with me here today. I'm really looking forward to and excited about jumping in and exploring all of the things, Lorna.
This is awesome. I'm excited to be here, Brad. And I know since we've been talking about me coming on and being interviewed for your podcast, it's been very exciting. And I'm excited to share because I know what I share is probably reflective of a lot of people's journey, and I'm looking forward to connecting. So.
Yes, let's jump right in. So as mentioned, you are all of those things, but you're also the founder of the Sexuality Bodywork Canada. You are a Somatic MindSet coach. You're also a poet and a writer as well, a speaker, a healer. That is one hell of a lot of stuff to unpack here in the conversation and discuss. And it's a lot of hats you're wearing and quite the extensive resume. So I want to start off. How do you find the time for all of this? And how important does prioritization and organization play a role? How important a role does prioritization and organization play in your daily life? And how do you stay on top of things?
Great questions. Thank you, Brad. You know, it's actually kind of an interesting thing. I would say that where I've been at right now is practicing what I teach. And that is the journey of going within. And this whole aspect of somatic is about the body. And, you know, you look at all of those hats and the different titles and things that are on my resume. And really what it comes down to is, in some ways, really quite simple, is that of feeling, being aware of the body as the instrument, and looking at the story of the mind of, you know, the things that are happening, the thoughts that are going on, and the sense of prioritization really comes to me living that. And so how do I prioritize things? By connecting into my body and into that wisdom that's there. And from there, then what comes is, okay, what's the thing that needs to be addressed right now? Is it my own self-well-being? Is it connecting with clients? I'm very intuitive, so tuning into that aspect of things. And I would say on one level, I'm very, very organized, and yet another way, not. So it can seem chaotic. And I was sharing with a friend not too long ago, when I was doing my teaching degree 20 plus years ago, I remember we were doing an activity. We were in a room with a sort of a theater room. So there were the high bleachers and all, and we were about 40 of us in the class. And the teacher kept out about 5 or 6 at a time. And the rest of us, we were to pick one person and follow around and just, okay, go. And you follow that person wherever they go in this defined space. And it just seems so chaotic. The 5 or 6 at a time were sent at the top of the bleachers. And what seemed like chaos in the midst, you could see the pattern and the flow. So what I sometimes feels like chaos in my world is I know it's a part of a flow, and I just stay tuned into that. And so for me, that practice of my peach is just practice what I teach, is just to continue to come back into center and be there.
Now, I'm very curious, and with all of these hats you wear, what does your morning routine look like?
When I wake up, that's what I do, is I just check in with my body, what am I feeling, whether it's physical sensations, whether it's emotions that are happening, thoughts. I just sort of tune into there and just do a check. And then most often, some days it's just sort of bounding out of bed, but it's just that connecting in and doing some breathing and just feeling and coming back into center. And then from there, it's kind of, I hop up. Right now I'm living with one of my daughter's family. So I get to drive the kids to school. So I get up and put on boots and coats and a toque and head out and drive them to school. And then from there, it's just sort of, the routine from there is just sort of that self-care is important. Yeah. And from there, it seems important to just connect into. And I think that that's where I'm starting to really redefine my routine. Is one of the questions I remember you asking one of your guests is, when do you work best?
Yeah.
I tend to work best almost in the 11 o'clock till 3 a.m. time frame. That's not always conducive to family life. So,
no.
But I make do. And so it's my morning routine. Sometimes it's just a matter of what do I need to do in the day-to-day daytime hours where people are available that I connect with, and then some of my other stuff happens at nighttime.
I love it. I'm a night owl myself, so that's usually when I get my best work done too, is in the wee hours, like late at night and into the early morning hours. And you're right, it's not very conducive for family life and for running a business, really, because when you get to sleep that late, you have to be available during the day hours to speak with people. So it makes it a little more difficult, but we make it work, right?
We do. Yes.
What drives, motivates, and inspires you to keep going and pushing and excelling at all that you do, Lorna?
Multiple facets to that question. As you and I have spoken about as well, there's this thing about this calling that's just, I've got to do this. And, 40 years ago, as I sat as a young mom, as a young wife, a young mom of 20 years old, sitting there in a Christian women's club where we met, for a luncheon and then had a guest speaker come in. And I sat there and was so inspired. I have no idea what she was talking about. I don't remember. But what I remember was this, that's what I'm going to do. And, so 40 years later, that call is there even more. And the work that I've been doing, in the work of my somatic sex education has been for 13 years. And so working one-on-one has been critical and central. And I've been working more and more with groups over the years. And right now it just seems like speaking is just, it's time. It's time to speak and let my voice be heard, let my message be heard. And it's not just so that it's my message being heard. That's part of my expression, but it's how I speak to be able to support people in stepping into their greatest vision and experience of themselves.
It's funny that you mentioned finding your voice and whatnot. This morning I had a podcast interview and the woman is a voice empowerment guide. So very interesting, that little tie-in there with you being a woman and finding your voice and finding your calling and all of that. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of fun in the sense that some of the things that I do when I'm working with people in the sexual realm of things is recognizing that oftentimes sex happens, whether it's solo sex or partner sex, often happens quickly, quietly, and in the dark. So this whole idea of freeing the voice, whether it's our message for our saying what we want, what we don't want, to be able to acknowledge and let our sexual sounds come out as well, is voice is so powerful, so central.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of which, you've decided to focus your energy in your business on somatic sex education, spiritual mentorship, among a host of other things. And this is as a result of your own spiritual journey and midlife sexual awakening, correct?
That's right.
Can you share a little bit about your own personal experiences and awakening and why this inspired you to take this path that you're currently on to doing the work that you do?
I'd love to. I grew up in a Christian home, a beautiful, loving family and community, very conservative. And I was, as I mentioned earlier, the whole thing of being married and be a wife and a mother, that was sort of my focus. That's what I grew up having that as a model, and that was sort of my place. And so I was married for 30 years to this beautiful man, and we have 2 beautiful children together, 2 daughters. But what I realized was that, I was not connected to my sexuality. Looking back, what I realized, 20 years later, I realized that the fact that I had been raised to sex belongs to marriage, save yourself for marriage. And that's so prominent, right? It's so prevalent in our world right now. Save yourself for marriage. So I had this idea that my body, my sexuality was not mine. It belonged to my husband. It belonged to the marriage. So I had no concept of exploring my own sexuality. I was a good girl and I saved myself for marriage, but I did not explore my own body, my own sexuality. So we get into marriage and it's kind of like, okay, it's all of a sudden, it should be everything in place, and it wasn't. And so, having this, being able to get aroused and all that, and my husband, doing what men are so beautifully eager to do, is to please their woman, their wife, their girlfriend, partner. But I didn't know my own sexuality. So 5 years into the marriage, my husband finally said to me, why don't you find out what makes you feel good so you can tell me? Really a wise thing to say. And
yes.
I laugh because I say I'm a really good learner, but it only took me 20 years to start that journey of exploring. So I sort of put things on the back burner, but night after night, just, I think, like it's very common, it's just I fell asleep crying because my body had been awoken, aroused, but didn't know what to do with it. And he didn't know. He'd researched and just assumed that, from the research, that I, like a lot of women, are non-orgasmic, which is not true. We're actually multi-orgasmic. Right. But anyway, so when the girls were raised, I then felt it was important for me to start to explore my own sexuality. And it wasn't about going about being with other partners, but it was about me connecting to my own body. So I took various courses and trainings. And in one of them, our journey was for at least 7 days, and this was actually the precursor, the connection to sexological bodywork. Our first assignment was for 7 days, up to 30 days, for half an hour every day to do our, what I now call PEP, personal erotic practice. And so add a little pep to your day. And so for me, I chose the mirror meditation, which was to look at myself in the mirror. So here I was propped up naked against the bed on the floor, and all I could do was just like, this is gross. This is disgusting. This is, just looking at myself and all the self-loathing that started to come up, the shame, the guilt, the disconnection, but the self-loathing, the shame, and even got to the point of existential shame. And the tears were just streaming down. And when I got to that level of it, things started to really shift. And it was just kind of like, wow, this is so amazing. This is so good. This is so pure. It's not bad. It's not wrong. It's not dirty. And in that moment, I literally had a 180, an instantaneous 180-degree change in my world, where I had gone from not being able to talk, like, seeing a young couple in the, at the Dairy Queen kissing. It was just like, oh, gross, to now everything I saw was sexually whole and pure, and this journey. So that was where I had, been a teacher in the school system for years. I had then gone on to teaching in energy work, and now it just became a natural thing to take my love of teaching to the erotic sexual realm of things. So that's where I took sexological bodywork as a student for 3 different times. And on my last time, we stood around, I was down in the Australia training, and stood around the circle in our closing circle. And what's our intention as we leave this training? And for me, it was, I want to bring this to Canada. So it started out of the U.S. and has spread. And so for me, it was important to bring it to Canada. And so for 3 years, I co-taught the training, the professional training that teaches other people to be sexological body workers, and really supporting people in reconnecting to their bodies, to their sexuality, to their emotions, that ability to feel. And for me, it was life-changing for me, and it's just been a joy to support people in connecting and finding out what's true for them, beyond the sense of this is what you should do, shouldn't do, who you should be, and all that. So it's been amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's sort of, I'll pause there.
Can you explain a bit more about the sexological body worker thing and what that exactly is, what it's all about? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're the founder of Sexological Bodywork Canada. So can you just explain a bit more about what that is and what the organization's all about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was founded by Joseph Kramer out of the States, and it came out of this back in the 80s. And just really, how do we connect with people in a way that is consensual, that is honoring of the person, and allows sexuality to be seen as natural, healthy, normal, and where it's not experienced as such, as how do we help to move through those wounds, those crevices, if you will, of connection to our wholeness and ourself. And so sexological body work, it goes beyond, it's not talk therapy, and we don't even call it therapy. It's body work, and it's one-way touch. It is there for the clients, the students, for their wholeness, for their healing, for their pleasure. and to be able to let people do that. So it's really profound work. In there's some people that will come, because they want to connect with their sexuality. Somebody wants to come because they want to find out what else is possible for them. They want to move beyond the old stories that they've been taught and told about who they are. Different, men will arrive there saying, and I don't even say men will come for sessions. I say, men will arrive for sessions. Yes. But often it's, sexual, maybe it's premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction. And so that's often where they will arrive to me and to sexological body workers for sexual trauma. I'm working with a woman overseas. I've never met her. I've been working with her for over a year and a half, and for childhood sexual abuse. And so just the healing that's coming from that, and the ability to switch back on, the ability to feel, because when feeling gets shut down, it's the whole range of feeling. Like, I don't want to feel that pain, but also that takes away our ability to feel the joy as well. So it's really starting to let the body know it's safe to feel, and opening up and letting the nervous system relax into and open to feel.
So this sexological bodywork is all over the world, and it's in the U.S. You said you were down in Australia for training. Mm-hmm. You brought it here to Canada. So it's basically, it's in a lot of places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I've never even heard of it before. Yeah, that's wild.
It's really, really profound.
So have you seen a change then? Because speaking about sex and talking about sex and all of these things, sex, I think it's still seen, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a very taboo topic. People don't want to talk about it. People are too scared to talk about it because of societal conditioning, religious condition, parental, all of these things. Have you seen a change then since you've entered into this world as being part of your work from when you first started to now? Have you seen a shift at all in the way that we are as a human race, as society, looking at sex, and it's becoming more, for lack of a better term, okay to talk about, and people are starting to become more open about it?
Yeah, I do think so. And I think that's probably various reasons why that's happening. And I agree that it's very much been a taboo thing. And that ties into the whole thing of sexuality and spirituality is, for me, I think it's in the story. Those three things, it's so huge because the story of sex being wrong, the story of sex being shameful and taboo, it's actually hilarious because we come from sex. And so, and so we do all that we can to prolong life. Well, if sex is what brings us into this life experience, then at what point, why would it be wrong? So it's this whole idea of, for me, it's the story of, in our human experience, we turn away from this story and the truth of who we are and, as spiritual beings, that let's look away and make sex bad, because if people knew that sex was that portal to spirit, then where's the need for the church? Where does the whole thing of separation and wrong and right and bad and good, all of that play in? So for me, it's a beautiful seeing it from the perspective of the role it has played in our human experience as spirits.
It's pretty wild when you think about it that way. Mm-hmm. It's like, yes, this is how we all got here, is because of sex. Yet we silence ourselves, or we silence people when it comes to talking about it. And how do we continue to move the needle forward and to keep progressing with the openness? How do we go about that? How do we continue on this path?
Mm-hmm. Great question. And I'm going to go back because I realize I didn't really fully answer your previous question in terms of some of the things that are, and I'll tie these two together, that what are some of the things that are making it more talked about or more okay to talk about? I think people are just waking up to there's nothing wrong with it. I think the internet, right? The whole thing about we're no longer so isolated and just in our own community. All of a sudden we're seeing a bigger world and wait a minute, they're doing this and this is okay. And wow, this culture, it's okay. I have a friend that moved from Germany, and she said when she moved to North America, she said two things were absent: death and sex, so that speaks to the fact that there are different cultures. In Norway, they have a great sex education system, in the school system, so this idea that, this is the one way, it's helping us take our blinders off. Things like 50 Shades of Grey, Gwyneth Paltrow's Sex, Love, and Goop, where she talks about that. We've talked, sexological body workers is talked about in there. We've got the whole DS, domination and submission, kink, BDSM is talked about in there. So those are some things that are going global. I'm just trying to blank on, there was the movie of a beautiful, one of our actresses that it's just talks about, what it was like for her to hire a male escort, for her pleasure.
Right.
So there's lots of different things that are coming out in the media that are really helping us to question what we've been taught and told about it being wrong.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit then about, so you went through your own midlife sexual awakening. Mm-hmm. You mentioned you have 2 daughters. So how have you bestowed those lessons onto them and taught them about it so that they don't go through a similar thing? Mm-hmm. Or have you?
Great question. I'm going to say when they were their very, very early teens, and I was just in the midst, I had not even, all I knew was I don't want them exactly to go through what I've just gone through. So I said, girls, I'd like to talk with you. I pulled them aside and I said, I just want you to let you know that it's okay to masturbate. And for me, that was a crucial thing because I did not want them to go through that, even though it was still going to be another, 10, 15 years until I have my own awakening, that it was important for me to give voice to that for them, to set them free, however they choose to explore. Since my sexual awakening, and I call it a midlife sexual awakening because I did not have my first orgasm until I was 42 years old. And then it was 5 years, and I had hired a masturbation coach to support me in my journey.
There's such a thing as a masturbation coach?
Yeah, and that's what
Holy shit.
That's one of the things that I get to do, is I get to support people in their connecting to their sexuality in that way and giving them some, okay, to breathe. Okay, let's do this. And okay, here's your practice for this week. Yeah. So
I had no idea.
So, yeah. In person, online.
Wow.
And, yeah. Okay,
sorry, go on.
No, it's okay. Mm-hmm. So I've been very free about talking about things. And I remember even one time when one of my daughters, my oldest daughter, was visiting, and she said, and I've got 3 daughters, one by my husband by marriage, and my 2 birth daughters. So my oldest birth daughter, she was visiting, and she had cut into a head of red cabbage, the purple cabbage, and she cut into it, and she said, how the white and the purple is just so beautiful. And she said, oh, look at this, Mom. And I said, oh, it looks like labia. She says, Mom, everything looks like genitals to you now. So, and they've said it's like, who are you and what did you do with our mother? That's how much of a switch it has been for them. So, but now they refer clients to me. Yeah, they refer clients and talk with me about how we can do things. My bondassage work, they know, it's, I don't hold back, and it allows for an environment for them as adults and for their children to be growing up in that they never had as children, that I never had as children, so yeah.
So how has that enhanced your relationship with your daughters, all of this? Mm-hmm.
I think in some ways it's really created this ability for us to, number one, be real and raw with each other, to be honest and support each other in the journeys that we're going through. It's not even just about sexuality. It's about who we are as humans, who we are as people, coming back to the voice, all of those things, to living our own truth. And a big part of that, sometimes that means that living our own truth goes against what we've been taught or told or what somebody else might think. And it's just, dare we live our own truth, whether that's sexually, whether that's a life path of career. It seems like it's all so intricately connected.
Yeah.
It means, our spiritual beliefs, where do they fit in with any religious beliefs that people have grown up with? And that, so for me, it's really created an openness and a strength of relationship that is so, so powerful.
That's beautiful. So I'm curious then as well, what are your thoughts on sex education in the education system, right? Like, how do you feel about that? Because you've helped obviously educate your daughters, albeit at an later stage, but what are your thoughts on sex education and just some teacher teaching our children about sex ed?
Mm-hmm. What do I think about it? That other than, like I gave you the example of Norway, and I've watched their videos, but in our North American and big part of culture, it's sad. It is what it is, and it's sad. It's doing a disservice, and it speaks to the discomfort of people with their own sexuality. Because if they can't talk about it, if they can't face it themselves, how can they easily and comfortably share it and help other children learn? So it's very revealing about people's disconnection and embarrassment and shame and confusion. So it's not about blaming. It's almost like, how can they know? What's one of the things I hear as a somatic sex educator is over and over is, this is a sex education I wish I had had when I was a kid. Over and over. And so it speaks to that. Yeah. I remember even as a teacher when I was doing substitute teaching, about 15 years ago or so, when I said to the teacher, what do you do for sex education? And he said, well, we've got 2 hours set aside for it this week.
So do you think that this is something that should be taught in the schools, or should this be kept at home and it's up to the parents to educate our children on this topic?
I think it's both. I think that there's that, and to be able to, and this is one of the things that I would love to do, is I have a program that's for adults and that I would like to develop as well for children, but to see the naturalness of sexuality. When we can look at it that way, we can move through our old traumas about it, our own blockages, and to be able to really create environment for children to grow up in homes and schools. And we think about the teen years, right? The puberty, and, it's just this wild thing. Well, you know how it is when anything, like, here's a thing of ice cream. Don't eat the ice cream. All you want is the ice cream.
Yeah, of course.
And so when we can start to say, hey, it's a natural thing. Wow, your body's going through these things, and what you're feeling and thinking, that's natural. And so to be able to create this environment where it's not about shame and wrongness, but a natural, healthy thing. We talk about mental health has certainly come up more with the pandemic, so that's been highlighted. We've got, physical health, get out, get exercise, eat well, all of those things. And yet sexual health it's not addressed. And yet it's so crucial, again, because we come from sex. It's what keeps the human, perpetuates the human species. It's something that it's a drive, it's an appetite, it's a curiosity, something to explore, and, different stages in life. And so to ignore it is really
asinine.
Yeah, exactly. There's a good word.
And so at what age then do you think is an okay age to start teaching our children about this stuff, whether it be in schools or at home?
As soon as they're born.
Okay.
And I think it's just really age appropriate, just whatever's there, little children. And it's no accident that our hands are our arms and our hands are the length that allow us to touch our genitals easily, right?
Right.
And so no accident there. And so little children, just start to touch themselves and explore. Yeah. And so let them explore and touch, and, that feels good, doesn't it? And, and a healthy, coming back to voice, letting them know their voice is, there's times when it's appropriate and times for people not to. And, so allowing them to have that sense of autonomy and consent, boundaries. What is their space? And as things are appropriate. And it's just, for me, that's very much, it's just letting it be natural throughout the time. One of the things that I say is important is make sure that your children have access to either a full-length mirror or a hand mirror, a makeup mirror, so that they can look at their parts. When I used to do some retreats where I would have maybe 2, 3, or 4 women at a time, and I would take them in and I would do a genital mapping and just sort of helping them to find out about their genitals. So, here we were with, I would take them on a tour. I would demonstrate, and they had their coconut oil and their makeup mirrors. And one woman who was 73 years old, she said, "This is the first time I've ever seen my parts."
Wow.
Yeah.
That is profound. Holy shit.
Yeah. And I think what's really different is because we have people with male bodies with a penis, they see and touch their genitals, their penis every day, for pleasure, for peeing. For women, it's tucked in between there. This beautiful this sacred temple is tucked away, covered with hair for an adult, but between the legs. And so it's not seen unless intentionally done. So that's why I say, get your child, make sure that they've got privacy, whether it's in the bathroom or their bedroom, make sure they've got access to a full mirror so they can see their bodies as they're growing up, so that they can look at their genitals. Like, what does, when they squat down and put the mirror between their legs, what does it look like for their anus? What does it look like for their genitals? And how are the parts in there? So I think that's
But then again, you've got so many other factors that get put in here, is the whole religion thing, and depending upon the family's upbringing and all of these things. I mean, you're not going to get a religious set of parents that are going to have their kids do this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? So there's so many other things that factor in here.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you can't break through that. I don't think anyway.
I think it's, it comes back to when people are ready, when they're ready for a new experience, I'll show up in their world, or they'll show up in my world, or, for the person that's there to support them in having a different experience. And sometimes, as it takes either a crisis or just, I can't do this anymore. Something has to change. Yeah. And that's kind of like, okay, let's do that. That's where it's starting to connect into the feelings and look at the thoughts that are coming on. It's actually one of the things that I've thought often, Brad, and a growing awareness of how deeply this goes is, women are emotional, right? And so you're emotional, but don't feel sexual. Men,
you've got a block. You can only feel certain emotions.
That's right. And on the other hand, men are taught to, you're sexual, but don't feel emotional, tough up, don't be a sissy. Right?
It's so bizarre.
It is. And so on either end, we talk about, one level or another or multiples, we're all taught don't feel. It's not safe to feel. It's not right to feel. It's not good to feel these things. Shut them down, ignore them, all of those things. So,
male or female. There's some blockage in there that we're taught that you can't feel this way and you can't feel this way because you're a boy, because you're a girl. It's fucked up.
It is.
No wonder the world is so fucking crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we're taught to block out certain feelings. We're human beings. We are feeling emotional beings.
Exactly, yeah.
You can't feel certain. Well, I mean, you can, but we're not supposed to.
That's right.
We're supposed to be able to feel all of the emotions, whether it's sexual, sad, whatever it is.
Yeah. The gift of
we're not meant to block.
Yeah, that's right.
Mind-boggling. I never thought about it that way. That is very intriguing and very interesting. Can you share with us what you do as a sexuality and spirituality embodiment mentor and teacher?
I do it in multiple ways or from different angles, and it's based on what that person seems to need. Sometimes it will always come down, as I mentioned earlier, it will always come back to supporting them in connecting to the body as a feeling instrument and letting them feel as much as we can. And again, looking at the thoughts that are at play. I talk about being a somatic mindset coach. And I do that very intentionally. Number one is to connect into the body so that they're feeling. And then look at the thoughts, to be able to look at the thoughts that we have and look at the characters that they are. We think that these thoughts are ours and that they are, that there are thoughts. And just kind of, you think about it, okay, where did that thought come from? Did I think, okay, I'm going to think this thought?
No. It
was just there. And start to look at, actually, that character, if I really look at whose voice that is, it actually is a mean character, or feels like a little sad waif of a child. It's just kind of, so you start to look at things. So for me, that's part of the story unweaving. Is that we come into this world, and so when I'm working, I feel like I'm jumping around a little bit here, but trying to put some pieces together. I
think it is all intricately tied in together. All of the work you do is all intertwined.
Yeah. So when we come into this world as little babies, we're just taking in the whole world, through our senses, and then little by little, we start to, the adults and the other people in the world start to say, here, hey, baby, and here's mama, and here's daddy, and here's a cup, and here's a cat, and here's all these things. And so what was just it is now starts to have labels to it. And we start to label it, and we start to think that this is what it is. And that includes the feelings, that I'm feeling such. Oh, are you feeling sad? Are you feeling this? It's just actually, I'm just feeling this. So part of my work is to be able to take people from what they're feeling. Okay, I'm feeling angry. Okay, great. So now, can you see that word and then let it take you into the sensation and then just feel that? So it starts to become this, what I call unlaminating what we think of the feeling and the word as being one and the same. Oh, I'm feeling angry. Right. No, I'm feeling this, and I've called it anger. 25 years ago, some of my mentors talked about thought plus feeling equals emotion. And
interesting.
They're not the same. A thought, there's a feeling. If we can start to, and this is one of the things I love about my work, is to be able to take those things and start to let the word, as I say, let it dissipate like a cloud and sink into the feeling, because those are often the things that we've not been able to feel, haven't been given permission to feel, and so to let that happen and to feel into it as fully as we can.
But that's what we do, though, as humans, is we have to label everything because it makes us feel comfortable. But I mean, how do you, other than the labels we know, like you just said, I feel angry, how else can you describe that?
Exactly.
You have to put some kind of label on it. You have to be able to call it something, I guess. Because just if someone asks you how you're feeling, you can't just say, I'm feeling this way. Well, what the fuck is this way?
That's right. That's right. So language becomes a point of communication and reference. And when we get held in that spot, as if that's what they are, then we're disconnected from our body because we're not letting ourselves truly feel what's actually there because we're still hanging on to the word.
So how do we get around that?
Great question. It's a practice. I would say that's a big part of it. And the analogy that I use that may be appreciated is that for men, in particular, men think that ejaculation and orgasm are one and the same.
Right.
They're not. And so a man can ejaculate without having an orgasm. A man can orgasm without having an ejaculation. And for a lot of men, because they happen at the same time, they think they're one and the same. When we can start to, well, do you want to have an orgasm without the ejaculation? Do you want to ejaculate without orgasm? So I use that analogy because that's one that people can connect to. Well, yeah, we're not so often thought because this labeling of things happens at such an early age, this connecting into creating this sense of identity of being human beings, that it's hard to disconnect them. But when we can start to look into them, then we can start to see, oh yeah, there's the sensation. Okay, can I let go of the word? Oh, but that's what I'm feeling. Actually, can you just let yourself feel into it a little bit more? And it's often because of the labeling, the story, which is, again, coming back to this whole thing of story. Like, what a great story we're living. We are the living story. We're this character having this amazing experience. And so to be able to be immersed in that, there's this sense of, well, I need to be able to talk about and label and have this. And the core of us, this essence of us, is just in this beautiful experience of being human.
Well,
let's human beings, yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, of just being the humans. That's where we're in the midst of, and so with my work, Brad, it really becomes a thing of helping people. If I'm doing hands-on work with them, then it's letting them feel, and that's where even, as I mentioned, with bondassage, right? My work as a bondassage practitioner and trainer is really to be able to support people in feeling. Most of my clients are males, and I talk very much a dichotomy of male and female, and that is quite intentional, very intentional, in fact, because that's a big part of who we've come to be, is this sense of duality, is people are separate from God, and there's males and females, and this whole duality piece. And so my work is really about coming back, and I see, if you look at the shape of the cross, the vertical one is the spirit in the human experience. The left and right would be multiples, but for this purpose, talking about female and male and how they're separate from each other. And for me, it's actually what I call implosion, is about, instead of exploding in our experience of, I'm looking for authority outside, I'm looking for permission outside, I'm looking for my partner outside, I'm looking for somebody to please me outside, all of those things, it's bringing all of those things that we thought we were separate and bringing them back in. And I see that center point where these intersect is, there's our sex. And it's not just about having sex, I'm not talking about that, but our sexual, erotic, life force energy with sex as the portal, and bringing everything back in. And so able to let people through this work come back into an experience of their wholeness by feeling, letting themselves let go of the labels and just feel what's there. And so, as I was saying with bondassage, most of my clients are males.
Right.
And this gives them an opportunity to really let go and just really start to feel. When their senses are taken away, they can't talk. You can't talk. You can't say anything. You just get to feel. All these different sensations that are pleasurable and some that are called painful, and just kind of like, oh my goodness. And it really starts to take them out of their mind and into their body.
Well, everything starts with self. We are the foundation for absolutely everything. And you mentioned about seeking validation outside, seeking our partner, seeking pleasure, seeking all these things outside of ourselves. We have to bring it all back to starting within. Everything starts there.
Yeah. So that's where I see, when I talk about being a sexuality and spirituality guide, mentor, teacher, it's about bringing the sexuality back home. How many people, don't necessarily self-pleasure other than to get a quick release, but to tap into that wisdom, that pleasure, that wholeness within sexually, as well as to bring ourselves back to the spiritual wholeness that we are within. So that's...
Well, then does that not tie in tantric sex and all of those things, that whole avenue as well? Because isn't that more spirituality based?
I think it is. And, when I did my sacred intimate training through a tantric lens, we talked about not necessarily the whole thing other than some of the principles of tantra, which are, and the ones that I have remained with me that I implement, is the healing power of pleasure, and as above, so below, and as within, so without. So those are the ones that really reflect how I practice and my experience of life and my work.
Now, you mentioned the bondassage. Let's talk a little bit about that. So you are a bondassage trainer and practitioner. Can you speak a little bit about the work you do as a bondassage trainer? What inspired you or led you down the path? How did you get involved in that world?
Mm-hmm. Well, if sex is taboo, BDSM and kink is even more taboo.
Yeah. Well, nothing's off limits here.
Exactly.
So let's talk about it.
That's right. Yeah.
We can educate some people.
That's right. When I was doing one of my early sexological bodywork trainings as a student, we did a workshop, and one of the students brought a workshop in, which was just, some spanking of just, connecting hands on knees and just spanking the bottom, and then, different positions, and it was also connecting. And I remember then it was kind of like, wow, this is fun. And it was just sort of opened up, because for me, spankings had been a form of punishment. They were, not connecting at all. And so all of a sudden to have something done in a big way differently was really powerful. And that was, I think, my big aha of how, when people are going through things, it's not about the act itself, but whether it's consensual or not. So for me, then it was almost interesting, because when I did that training, I said to one of the participants, I said, can you take me to the leather store? I want to get a corset. And she's kind of like, where did that come from? Being this good girl born in a religious thing, BDSM and all of that was in some ways not on my radar at all. And
right.
At the same time, anything that I wear of it was just so sinful, so evil.
But I'm you know what? I'm very curious as to how all of that came into bondassage, like the leather and the masks and all. Like, how did that even factor in and become part of it?
That's a good question. And I've not even, to be honest, I've not even explored the history of all of that, how that has come.
Okay.
I think in some ways it goes down to a natural, my intuitive part goes that there's a natural sense of the wildness, that naturalness of things, and getting in touch with one's roots or wildness, one's innate nature, natural aspect of things. So I think that's where it is. So for me, it was just an interesting thing. So I got that, and from there, soon after that, one of my colleagues told me about bondassage, and I said, I'm going to do that. And for me, it just really seemed like it was another form of healing. And when I talk about healing, it's not about even as a healer, because I see healing as a recognition that we are whole.
Right.
Not about becoming whole, but it's that recognition. So as a healer, I'm helping people to recognize and experience their wholeness. And I see that bondassage, I recognize bondage and erotic massage together as a powerful way to support people in experiencing their wholeness, in feeling and being able to move beyond the confines of the mind and to feel.
Being a bondassage trainer, so that's bondage and erotic massage combined. So what do you do as a trainer? You're training other people to become bondassage experts?
That's right. So my first one was to be a bondassage practitioner. So I took that training, and then I, had clients would come in that were looking for domination and submission, for some BDSM, maybe had been exploring or interested about kink, but didn't know how to do it. So this is really a safe, gentle way of doing it, and yet very sensual. And I practice it as I do according to the Sexological Bodywork. And even though I'm not involved with Sexological Bodywork Canada currently at all, other than, that was sort of a part of my roots, I still practice this. I still practice my work is one-way touch, and, I'm clothed, and it's just, for me, it's about this for people to feel into their own experience, to connect to their own body, to their own sensations. And so that's what I, as a practitioner, and then as a trainer, that's what I get to train other people in. So some people come to me who have been, they're body workers, they have been doing massage, or they've been doing even somatic sex education, sexological body work, just to have another way to be able to support people in using their voice and feeling and connecting to their bodies. And for so many people, it becomes a spiritual journey as well.
So as a practitioner then, do you have clients come to you?
I do. And I'm actually just with COVID being out. And then during that time I had cancer and chemo and
oh my gosh,
and then making a big move. And so I'm just in this process now of getting back into doing in person. So last month, well, we're still in December. Earlier this month, I had opportunity to do a training for this incredible woman who came from Toronto. And I did her training for bondassage. And in 2 weeks, I'm going to be doing another training for a woman who's here on the west coast of Canada and doing her thing. So people can fly in and I'll train them. I do multiple trainings, like of different people, like a group training. I've done that because that's a big part of it is get to then learn together. And again, that's where coming back to your thing about, should sex education be just in homes or in schools?
Yeah.
And in homes, it can be talked about more privately of different things, more personally perhaps. And yet the thing in school is to learn communally. We learn basketball, swimming in teams, and that type of thing. So why, and I'm not necessarily advocating sex, that's not what I'm saying, but to learn about sex in a thing, it's kind of like, oh, they have a question, I had that question too. And we start to see that we're not so different, and what we're thinking and feeling is not wrong or bad or shameful. It's just kind of like, wow, we're all in this together. So,
but then again, there are so many parents who don't believe that it should be taught in schools and don't agree with it and don't agree with this person teaching it or that person teaching it. And so then you have kids being pulled out of those classes and not participating in those classes too, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's very, I would think they're very tough waters to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, is it even I don't even know anymore. My kids are 21 and 23, so I don't even know if it's even a commonplace anymore in schools to teach sex education.
It is a little bit. It's a part of the curriculum that's required, like other things, and yet it's one of the things that sort of a lot of times gets sort of swept under. Like
it's minimized.
Yeah, a curriculum that's supposed to go throughout the whole year. And as I mentioned, this teacher says, we have 2 hours blocked away for next week.
But I'm curious what they teach the kids, like, what the curriculum's like. I'm very curious about that. Because I remember a while back, I think it was a few years ago now, there was a lot of hype and talk about teaching sex to the kids in schools, and parents were up in arms about how it was being done and all of these things as usual. I mean, I remember when I was in school, grade 5 or 6, I think we learned about sex education. And that was mostly about the anatomy that we learned, like health class. It was part of the health. So phys ed, and then you'd have your health classes as well tied in. And then sex education was kind of balled up in that as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious to know how it's shifted, how it's changed.
There is more of a focus on, there's the anatomy is there. Some places will talk about, safer sex, and some it's, abstinence is the focus. So there's different things. And then there is the sexual, sexual health. What is sexual health and what does that mean? And how safer sex if you're going to do it. So those things, they are there. And you're right. It's some parents don't want it, and you're not going to get some sex education that's going to be, agreed by everyone. It's just kind of, okay, so let's just go ahead and, that's where I guess each school board or whatever has to make theirs, and based on what their collective decides, and go from there. So, well,
we could do a whole episode on the school system and the education system and how broken it is. So we'll stay away from that one for the most part, because that could be a complete episode. So I want to talk a little bit about your story Unweaver title. I love that title. Can you explain and share what that term means? Like, what is a story unweaver, and how do you classify yourself as a story unweaver? What do you do as a story unweaver?
It's interesting. I was, as a child, I was an avid reader, and read as, and, being a poet. So as a kid, just writing poems. And so I've always had that part. And poems are really shortened stories, condensed stories. And then when I went on to be a teacher, I was a language arts major and writing stories, like story writing, and helping that part of the curriculum was one of my specialties. As I went through my own sexual journey and my spiritual journey, different mentors and teachers along the way, it was amazing how the whole theme of story started to just show up. And even now in the business world, we're talking about your story sells, tell your story, that's when it sells. And then, so looking at that thread, that theme that's been going on, and then this recognition that we are the story, this whole idea. If you look at books and movies, how a story is developed, you create I remember as a teacher, right? Okay, get your character, get your setting, who are the other characters, okay, what's the problem, right? What's the challenge to be done? And in fairy tales, there's often, as a template, often there's 3 challenges or 3 something. There's 3 challenges, 3 tests, 3 siblings, 3 magic wands or something like that. So 3 is always a key. So if you look at how a story is constructed and how this person, they're going along their life, and then they all of a sudden, here's the problem, here's this dilemma, here's the situation, and then how is that reinforced? How is that continued to show up and to be activated by different characters that show up in different situations all the way along the line? And as we're watching and reading and listening, we're trying to figure out how it's going to happen, how's it going to work out? And here's, okay, it's building and crash, and okay, it's going again, and looking at that until we get to this place of the problem's solved. And whether it's a totally different way or that was anticipated, like a surprise, wow, hadn't expected that. Or it's the character has this big aha, and they come through, the heroine's journey, the hero's journey, and until it comes to resolution and it closes. So if we look at our own life story, and Brad, you and I exchanged this in an email the other day, and a message that everything always shows up in a story exactly perfectly in time. Yeah. So there's no extra in a movie. There's no extra walking along the sidewalk that has not been intentionally put there, Yeah. And so to be able to look at our lives as we come through to the place where we're at, and we're in this process of change, is we can look at the people and the situations as, detrimental, and they've been harmful, and I've been hurt, and, there can be that victim mode that comes through. There can be this, I'm going to rise above it. And looking at situations that to recognize and to appreciate that everything has played a role in its perfect time and place for that. Something, I remember even a biblical thing, I remember some preacher talking about something from the Bible of, something that had happened. It ended up, it was a curse, but it became a blessing. And I thought, what if we could look at things as a blessing all the way along, even in the midst of it, to know that, and it comes back to this thing of the universe, our life is for us. Everything that's happening is for us. And so as a story unweaver, what I like to do, instead of necessarily looking at, weave the story here, because, there's a lot of people let's rewrite your story. And maybe that's a different way of saying, I unweave it. Let's go back and look at how it was woven together. What pieces need to be brought in together? So it's sort of going back and let's unweave it to come into this place of really appreciating the role and understanding how each thing, that's what came, that's why that showed up. Or there was a little bit of foreshadowing there. And I think in some ways, by doing so, it brings us into this place of realizing that where we are, who we are right now, has been intricately and immaculately designed for our life, spirit, purpose.
Absolutely. And I think that also speaks to your mindset work too, because that's a big piece of it, is shifting the mindset to, first of all, see that life is happening for you and not to you. That is a huge mindset shift to be able to do that. And I think also tied in with that is being able to take a step back, look at the situation, look at what's happening or what has happened, analyze it, and find the silver lining within it. Because I don't care what anyone says, somewhere buried, maybe buried incredibly deep, or it may be close to the surface, there is a silver lining in every situation that occurs for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where what I love is actually this thing about, I see the patriarchy as a gift because it has helped us to, what's it like when the feminine, when that power, when that sexuality, when that leadership is, shame, don't access it. We know what it's like.
Yeah.
There's the masculine energy that runs amok, right? And so to be able to bring this feminine energy, this, the feminine, divine feminine energy back into the forefront, all of a sudden now and this is where for me as a pro-dom, when I was a pro-dom, as a bondassage practitioner trainer, is to be able to recognize that the masculine is there to serve and to support. And if they don't have that direction, then it's energy that just goes amok. And we know what the patriarchy looks like. There's energy that has not been channeled. And so it's not about condemning it. It's about recognizing the role that it has played, the gift that it is, in having us see what it's like when things are out of balance and not in harmony. And so as the feminine comes into this place of leadership, that the masculine, over and over in my practice, men come say, I want to be able to be there for my woman. So what does the woman need? She gets to say that to him. And there's where the relation sort of bring that together, and how that also plays into it is because that's how I see that spirit is. And we all have all of it within us.
Yeah, we all have both, masculine and feminine.
So the spirit being like the feminine, the form being like the masculine, that's what allows us to have this human experience. So
it's funny that we're talking about this because I was speaking about this with another guest. Her episode is going to be coming out on this Friday, actually. We're talking about the rise of the divine feminine and how it is on the rise. And I said, it's great. I've seen the shifts and I'm seeing the shifts happening, and it is moving towards what needs to happen. And I said to her, but it's not happening quick enough. And she said, hold on a second. Let's look at that. Let's think about that. She was talking about how she had a conversation with someone, and they said to her, it is happening in the perfect timing that it's meant to happen, because maybe if we rushed it, it wouldn't unfold the way it needs to. Or if we rush things don't tend to work out the way they should if they're rushed. Or just basically trying to say, we can't rush this. This is going to unfold the way it's meant to unfold and the way it needs to unfold. We don't need to rush it. Yes, we'd like to see change happen quicker, but no, it's not meant to. This is how it's going to unfold, and this is how it's meant to happen, and we need to embrace that. It'll happen in divine timing. It's just wild, but again, this could be a whole other episode. So many things. I think we could do about 6 or 7 episodes out of this conversation already.
Yeah, for sure. Love it.
Now, you are also the founder and creatrix and mistress of Crimson Queen Consciousness Academy. Can you share with us what the Academy is all about, what inspired its creation?
For me, it comes, and right now it's the foundations are being laid, and its fruition is yet to come into a whole thing. So it's where it came from is, I think, what ties into this whole aspect. So the crimson, taking it down, is queen aspect, being that divine feminine representation. Crimson came from one time when I was coaching one of my female clients in her erotic practice. She was, on the mattress here beside, and I was, scribing the wisdom that came from her as she was connecting to her energy. What came to me was, red is the color of woman. And when I look about that, it's, we think about the lifeblood and that whole, menstrual blood and life blood that goes through our veins. Even is this, again, it speaks to that aspect of divinity in human form, or through this human vessel. And so that's where, instead of red, it was crimson. It just seemed like the depth of it. Crimson, so crimson queen. So just really connecting to the woman leadership, divine feminine, as the consciousness, and connecting into the supporting the masculine and feminine in harmony and oneness. And for me, I see it as my vision. If I look at an internal, I feel into it, it's that of peace and harmony. When I look to the outside, what it looks like for me is this, even a retreat. I call it a retreat and training center, where people are there. They're coming for their spiritual healing. They're coming for physical, emotional, sexual wholeness and healing sessions. There's, trainings that are going on. There's body work that's happening. A place where some people come, for a weekend for a session, for a retreat. Some people come and live there for a month. Some people come and live there for a year. That's their home. And so it becomes this community where sexuality, spirituality is seen as natural and whole, and a place where people can come in and reconnect to that wholeness, to their wholeness on both sexual and spiritual levels.
It sounds incredibly beautiful and powerful. Lorna, you say that your mission is to help people see through their stories into the lens and portal of divine feminine power, sexuality, and leadership, moving beyond shame, sin, and guilt, trauma, disconnection, and disassociation, so they can experience embodied sexual and spiritual wholeness, live their truth erotically, alive and free, and in doing so, change their world. Why have you decided to make this your personal mission?
I think I would say in some ways that it's chosen me
Okay.
to live that mission. It's sometimes it's kind of like, who am I to be? It's kind of, who are you not to be? And it's been a mission that has evolved even as I, laid there, in my chemo time of the gift. I see the cancer and my chemo was such a gift to be able to be there, and just because all I could do was just feel and be feeling what the body was feeling and the emotions. And in that time, I remember feeling a real relaxation and kind of like, that would be how easy it would be to let go of this earthly experience. And I'm here because I have this mission. That's what I'm here for. And so it's continued. I hesitate to even call something being sickness or illness. I see it all as for me. And this cauldron of clarity, because even in this last couple of months, I was sick for 5 weeks. And in that time of just continuing this mission, continuing to be refined and getting clear, and my own inner work happening in preparation for and clarity and continuing to live and bring this forward.
That is incredible. Again, this talks to mindset, because there are so many people that would just see the bad in what you're going through and dwell on that, whereas you see it as a positive, as a gift. Incredible. Lorna, what aspect of your personality do you think has been the most helpful in your career?
My gentleness.
What's the best compliment you've ever gotten?
I pause. I don't know. It's in some ways it's kind of, I think it was when people would say, different people say, I want to be a mom like you. I want to be the kind
That's
of
a big
mother
one.
that you, I want to be the kind of mother that you are. And even as I say that now, it's kind of like interesting, because in my work right now, it feels like I'm stepping in even more into this role of the mother. As a trainer, I'm being this mother.
Matriarch.
Yeah.
What does the word empowerment mean to you?
That I will be a mirror for you so you can know your wholeness within, your power within.
I love that. That's a beautiful definition.
Thank you.
What does the best version of you look like when you close your eyes and imagine it?
Living from the truth within. There's no apology, there's no fear, there's no holding back. Just living the truth of what is flowing from me.
Okay, we're going to jump into a little rapid fire section here. So the next grouping of questions just be 2, 3, 4 word answer type thing, okay?
Okay.
What never fails to make you laugh?
Children.
Who would you like to be stranded on a desert island with?
Me. My mom.
What is your favorite self-care practice?
Listening in and feeling and honoring the sensations and emotions that are arising and just feeling into them.
What is your biggest pet peeve?
When people say, just ignore it. Or when I say that.
If you could teach the world one thing, what would it be?
Live true and enjoy the ride.
If you came with a warning label, what would yours say?
Be prepared for different perspectives and to have your world rocked.
That concludes our rapid fire section. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. What's something surprising that you've learned about yourself in the past year?
How deeply the character of Lorna has had the whole thing of that I am responsible for somebody else's reactions, emotions, choices, feelings, all of that. How deeply that has been woven, so reinforced within my character and my view of myself and my role, my relationships with other people.
So that's a story to unweave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because we aren't, and we can't be responsible.
No, exactly. And even in the summertime, there was some stuff that was coming up, and I was taken into a practice arose just out of natural thing of to do that and just to sit in when something, well, if you do that, it's kind of, It's okay, just come back in and just to feel into that center core.
What is the worst piece of advice you've ever gotten?
I don't know, to be honest. Wow, I don't know. Worst piece of advice. Save yourself for marriage. Maybe that's it.
Okay, there you go.
There you go. That's it.
What makes you happy or brings you the most joy?
Interestingly, what it feels like is, and I don't know if I think Brad, probably you have, and how many of our listeners have been on a merry-go-round.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as a child loving, trying to get on. We'd make it go so fast and try to get on and try to jump off. And, we'd hit the bar and we'd go flying or whatever.
Yeah.
And other times I would sit on the hub in the center and just sort of enjoy watching, people, oh, is he going to get on this time? Is he going to do that? Or, wow, this is so fast. And look how many people are going on and how many people can jump on. And I remember that feeling of sitting in the center, and it was just peaceful and it was just calm. It was just pure joy, because I could look out and see what was happening and feel the joy of what was happening around. And I realized now that experience was put into place for me. Was experienced so that I could come back into realizing that one of the things that gives me the greatest joy in life is just coming back into the center place and seeing and experience life from there, whether it's the laughter of the children and the time with my family, my husband, or it's, seeing the tragedy and the death and illness and the accidents and stuff like that I'm observing that, but it's always coming from this place of presence and just somehow a sheer joy of being able to see the extreme and the variety of experiences are happening around.
That's something that we all can learn to do, and that is slow down and take everything in and live presently, live in the moment, because we so often we're either living in the past or we're thinking about what we need to do, thinking about the future, and we need to be more in the present moment and live in the present. That's where life happens.
Yes, Brad.
What is one lesson your career has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point in their lives?
You can't get it wrong.
If you had the opportunity to sit down and have a 1-hour conversation with one woman, any woman in the world, who would it be and why?
It would be my mom. I'd love to know, and I think partly because, I come from her, and I want to hear of her experiences, because I think as a mom, you never get a chance necessarily to really hear about her thing. And I want to know who she is. I come from her, and I want to just know her, what I saw from the outside, and I want to know her even more from her heart.
If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be? Don't
do it if it doesn't feel good. If it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't feel aligned. Yeah.
Lastly, Lorna, if you were to deliver your last 30-second speech to the world, your corner of the world, your people, your tribe, what would that last 30 seconds sound like? What words of wisdom would you impart?
Sex is a gift. You are whole. There's so much to explore. Trust your feelings. Don't believe everything you think, and have fun. Enjoy the ride.
A very important lesson for all of us. We could all take a page from that book. Lorna, thank you so much for being here with me today and sharing all the things, Lorna, your journey, your story. It has been incredibly educational, incredibly inspirational. Just, it's been an all-around amazing conversation. We could have gone off in so many different directions. Like I said, we could have birthed 7 or 8 episodes just from this one conversation. So thank you for keeping this conversation so incredibly interesting for me and educational and inspirational. You are a beautiful human. I love what you're doing. I love the way you approach things, your mindset, and just your all-around being. You're a beautiful soul, woman, and human being, and I'm grateful to be connected with you, to be able to call you a friend, and to have you as a member of the Empowerography community. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you, Brad. It's been a joy to be here with you, and I'm just so grateful to you for creating this space and the way that you are being that mirror for women that ripples out in helping them to know and us to know our power and to share and to uplift one another and to share our messages for the sheer joy and pleasure of sharing our messages and for the way that it impacts and supports other people in this incredible journey we're in together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I receive that and appreciate those very kind words. Once again, my name is Brad Walsh, host of your Empowerography Podcast. Today, my guest has been Lorna Gale. She is a sexuality and spirituality guide and mentor, a bondassage trainer and practitioner, and a story unweaver. Thank you so much, Lorna. I hope you have an amazing rest of the day.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. If you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share with all your friends. You can find me at visuphoria.ca and follow me on Instagram at Empowerography Podcast and on Facebook at Empowerography. Please join me next time for another inspirational story from yet another amazing woman.